Ashikoche Cantor Fishman, thanks a lot. I'm wondering if our ushers can create a screen, perhaps a split screen with our guest today. There you are. Hi, Sarah.
Hello.
Yeah, we have had some truly wonderful speakers this year. This being the time of COVID, when the year began, we were very curious as to how we would be able to continue our tradition of scholars in residence and people who are involved in important conversations that have to do with the Jewish people, have to do with the future of the Jewish people, have to do with our world. And somehow we have been able to pull it off, and more than pull it off, we have really found great fulfillment in some of the extraordinary people that we've been exposed to and have been able to learn from this year. Sarah, it's really wonderful to have you, and you certainly will be included in this on this list. Sarah and I had a wonderful conversation this week and got to know each other a little bit, and now we get to see each other. So I would like to tell you a little bit about Sarah Hurwitz. Sarah Hurwitz was First Lady Michelle Obama's chief speechwriter from 2010 until 2017, and the author of a book, Here All Along, Finding Meaning, Spirituality, and a Deeper Connection to Life in Judaism, after finally choosing to look there. I had not heard of Sarah Hurwitz until I heard about her book, and I read her book. And after reading her book, I knew that I wanted to bring her to all of you, to B'nai Torah, for her to be able to share her message and to share her journey with you. So I'll tell you a little bit about her, a little bit more about her. She was a White House speechwriter from 2009 to 2017. She started out as a senior speechwriter for President Barack Obama, and then served as chief speechwriter to First Lady Michelle Obama. Sarah worked with Mrs. Obama to craft her widely acclaimed addresses, including the 2016 Democratic National Convention speech and her political speeches during the 2016 campaign cycle. She traveled with the First Lady across America to 5 continents. Sarah also worked on policy issues affecting young women and girls as a senior advisor to the White House Council on Women and Girls. Before working at the White House, Sarah was chief speechwriter for Hillary Clinton during her 2008 presidential primary campaign. She then joined the Obama campaign, serving as a senior speechwriter for then Senator Obama and helping Michelle draft her 2008 Democratic National Convention speech. Prior to the Clinton and Obama campaigns, Sarah served as deputy chief speechwriter for Senator John Kerry's 2004 presidential campaign, deputy chief speechwriter for General Wesley Clark's primary campaign, and a speechwriter for Senator Tom Harkin of Iowa. Sarah is also a lawyer at the Washington, D.C. office of Wilmer Hale. Sarah has been profiled in the Washington Post, in People magazine, People.com, the Boston Globe, and the Guardian. She's been interviewed on the Today Show, Morning Joe, Amanpour and Company, and NPR. And she's been featured in the Forward as one of the 50 Jews who impacted American life in 2016 and 2019. She's a graduate of Harvard undergraduate and Harvard Law School. Michelle Obama tweeted about Hurwitz's book, saying, Sarah Hurwitz is a brilliant writer with a big heart and a kind soul. And I'm sure Here All Along will reflect her thoughtfulness and eloquence, which I depended on for so many years. I'm so proud of you, Sarah, for sharing your journey and your voice with the world. Hurwitz offers audiences a behind-the-scene look at life in the White House, working for one of the most inspiring and influential women in the world. She also shares her advice on effective storytelling, providing concrete tips for how to create a moving, persuasive narrative that breaks through the noise and has a lasting impact. Welcome, Sarah. This is one of those introductions that takes a long time, but certainly is worthy. Before I begin with my questions, and before you begin to speak, I do want to tell you that I feel that so much of the journey that you describe is a journey that so many in your generation are going on.
Yes.
And it's a journey that perhaps starts with a passion for social justice and a passion for human rights, and then brings them back to an essential identity. And you did it so well. You articulated it so well, not just for yourself, I don't think, but for a generation. So
It is.
go on.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for that incredibly kind introduction. I just also want to say I have traveled around the country speaking at various communities, and I'm looking down, and there must be 500 or 600 people in this service on a Saturday morning Shabbat service. I don't know if you all realize how rare it is to see something like this in person, and especially on Zoom. And what a testament to the clergy and the leadership and the staff and the congregants of this community, that you all are here together in community. Let me tell you, hearing your cantor sing, I think I also want to be part of this community. This is extraordinary, and I'm just incredibly honored to be here. Thank you so much, Rabbi Steinhardt.
You're very welcome, and you're welcome. Perhaps soon in the future you can come to Boca and experience a beautiful day like the day that we're having in person. It's really nice. And also, by the way, you can come here and you don't have to wait until you retire. We do have a significant young population here also.
Amazing.
So let's go.
Yes.
Why did you decide to write a book on Judaism after leaving the White House?
It is not the usual next step after leaving the White House. In fact, when I was asking someone for advice, I asked a political pundit for advice at the end of the White House about whether I should write this book. And her response was, no. Your first book needs to be about politics or speech writing or Michelle Obama. And then you can write that weird book about Judaism that no one will really read. I thought, like, that's a little harsh. The answer to your question is, I grew up with very little Jewish background, went to Hebrew school, attended the High Holy Day services, but didn't feel connected, didn't really like it, became a bat mitzvah, and I thought, that's enough. I'm a cultural Jew, I'm a Jew by heritage, but if I want meaning or connection, I'll have to look elsewhere. Fast forward 25 years later, I broke up with the guy I was dating at the age of 36. I had a lot of time on my hands. I was kind of bored and lonely. And I happened to hear about an Intro to Judaism class at the local JCC. And I really signed up just to fill some time. I thought I should learn about my culture or heritage, it's something to do. But what I found in that class just blew me away. This was 4,000 years of crowdsourced wisdom from millions of people about what it means to be human, about how to lead a worthy and meaningful life, about how to be a truly good person, about how to find spiritual connection as an adult. And I just thought, where has this been all my life? So I started taking more classes. I started reading books. And I actually found it very hard to learn about Judaism as an adult. There were these wonderful kind of introductory how-to books that gave me the nuts and bolts, but I was really looking for the why to, and I found a lot of books out there, books that you've read. I'm sure you've read all of them, right? You've been, you're a scholar, you've been to rabbinical school. They're dense. And some of them are quite esoteric and academic. And I was just saying, where is the book that I need right now? The book that, yes, covers the basics, but more importantly, shares with me the most transformative, inspiring, meaningful wisdom that Judaism offers for us today. The wisdom that helps us cope with the challenges we face, that helps us find beauty and meaning and joy in our lives. And I just decided, ultimately, I think I'd like to write this book, and I soon saw why there weren't a lot of people doing that kind of writing, because it's tough. This is a complex, vast tradition, and to try to translate it, it's quite challenging. It actually made White House speechwriting look quite easy. So, I'm glad I did it. And it's been very moving to hear, not just from disengaged Jews who say, I had no idea this is what Judaism had to offer, but even very engaged and quite Orthodox Jews have told me, okay, I don't necessarily agree with how you practice, but you had a lot of fresh takes on things, right? You made me look at Judaism a little bit differently. And I see your passion for Judaism. And I see that you have 550 endnotes. So I can see that even though the book is conversational and kind of fun, you did do your homework. So that's been a real joy.
So we're going to go back a little bit to the way you see both Judaism impacting this world and how this world can impact the Jewish people both ways. let's go back in terms of your own career. Tell me a little bit about the journey to become Michelle Obama's speechwriter.
Yeah, it was a journey that actually, hearing my bio read, it sounds like it was this linear series of orderly successes, and it was not. I got my start as an intern in Vice President Al Gore's speechwriting office in the summer of '98, and the writers I worked for helped me get my first two jobs out of politics, both of which were failures. That job with Senator Tom Harkin. After about 9 months, his chief of staff sat me down and said, "I hear you've applied to law school. You should probably go." I was 23. I was a good writer, but I didn't really understand speechwriting. So I went to law school, and my third week of class, I randomly happened to meet a guy named Josh Gottheimer, who is now a congressman from New Jersey. But back then, he was a law school classmate. He'd previously been a speechwriter for President Clinton. And the two of us started freelance speechwriting to make money for our tuition. And he really taught me how you write a speech, how you structure it, how you write to be heard as opposed to read, which are actually two different skills. And then we got jobs on the Clark campaign, he lost. Jobs on the Kerry campaign, he lost. Job on the Hillary campaign, she lost. So, this is not an amazing track record, but then I got hired on the Obama campaign and he won. And while I was there to write for him, I did work with Mrs. Obama on her '08 convention speech, and that's where we got to know each other. And when I went to the White House to write for him, I would sometimes help her out on the side. And I actually realized I just liked writing for her better. I felt more at home in her voice. I really enjoyed what she was speaking about. And I made a really unusual White House career move in moving from writing for the president to writing for the first lady. I think it surprised a lot of people, probably including President Obama, but I just knew that I had more of a connection with her. I had more of a sense of how to communicate for her. And that's what I did for the next 6.5 years.
So I don't want to put you on the spot here, but
Yeah.
Did you write the line, "When they go low, we go high"?
That line was Michelle Obama's. I just typed it into the keyboard, and that is, she is someone who knows who she is and always knows what she wants to say. So a lot of the trick of being her speechwriter was to say, "What would you like to say?" And that is one of the things that she said.
I'm sure that being a political speechwriter, the amount of input you have differs from politician to politician, right?
Yes.
So when you work with Michelle, did you find that a lot of it was coming from her and you were just trying to be her voice? Is that?
Absolutely. She has this, first of all, she's a gifted speaker and writer in her own right. And she has this relentless authenticity where she's just going to be true to herself. And so she was very clear on what she wanted to say. I mean, it is a partnership, right? I added some wordsmithing and some skills, but speech writing for someone like her, it's not about scripting. It's not about putting words in someone's mouth. It's much more about channeling, about listening really carefully to what the person is saying and trying to honor it and make it come to life.
For those of us who watched the Obamas and watched the politics of those days, we viewed them through the lens, obviously, the lens of the news, the lens of the pundits, etc. Tell us about them. You must have gotten very close to them, yeah?
They are completely lovely. I mean, the number of people who stayed for all 8 years of that White House, it was quite high. In fact, our speechwriting team, half the team stayed for all 8 years. Typically in a White House, people leave after about 18 months to 2 years just because the job is so intense and stressful. But people stuck around because, I'll talk about her because I worked for, I can say he is so classy and gracious and warm and kind. And then, I moved over writing for her and it's the same. The woman you all see on TV really was the woman I saw in the office. She's funny, she's warm, she likes to tease her staff. I would always be running around, dealing with edits, kind of frantic, and she'd be like, "There goes Sarah again," kind of running around. And at the end of the administration, when I wanted to write this book, I felt shy about it, right? Like, who am I to write a book on Judaism? And, we had a meeting at the end of the administration where she was kind of checking in with me, saying, "What are you thinking about doing next?" And I didn't want to tell her. So I said, "Oh, I don't know, maybe I'll freelance. I'm not sure." I'm kind of like hemming and hawing. And she said, "Sarah, I'm worried about you. Like, you seem a little lost. Are you okay? What's going on?" And I said, "Okay, I have this idea for a book about Judaism that I want to write." She said, "That's great. Like, what an amazing thing. Why didn't you just say that? You should go write that book. That sounds wonderful." So I just think she was very into mentoring her staff, supporting her staff. She actually asked her communications director to just try to get some attention for her staff at the end of the administration to set them up for their next job. So I feel like I won the lottery, having gotten to work for him and for her.
Do you see yourself continuing as a political speechwriter? And are you doing
No.
it now? Yeah.
No, I don't. I really, after 10 years of doing it, I enjoy actually writing in my own voice. It's been a lot of fun to make that transition. And I think I'd like to really stay more in the book writing world. I do occasionally do some consulting, but that's not my main focus.
So you are a communications, you are a messaging person, and you've been doing it for, politicians, and you've been doing it for, national leadership. Tell us how you think Judaism can be communicated and messaged in a better way, in a more effective way, particularly to a large generation of Jewish people who are your age and younger than you, who identify strongly as Jews culturally, in terms of a value system, but don't necessarily identify religiously. Is this a problem in communication? Is it a problem in the way it's messaged?
I do think that is a part of it. I think too often in some parts of the Jewish world, you see this message, which is Judaism equals anti-Semitism plus Israel. And let's be very clear, anti-Semitism is a rising and terrifying problem. Anyone who thinks that that is not an issue, I do not know where you have been living, especially the past 5 years. Israel, obviously central to the Jewish people's story, and I hope, always will be. But, what about the other 4,000 years of our tradition? Right? What about our holidays, our life cycle rituals, our ethics, our spirituality, our art, our music, our history, our food, our music? There's so much more to Judaism, and to shrink it down to just 2 issues is quite disrespectful of what is an extraordinary tradition. So I would like to see a message that's more along the lines of Judaism equals 4,000 years of crowdsourced wisdom from millions of people about how to live a worthy life and be a good person and find spiritual connection. The scholar Deborah Lipstadt talks about how too often we focus on the oi of Judaism and not the joy of Judaism. And I think a little bit more focus on the joy would be good. But that said, I don't think our issue is so much a marketing or PR problem. I think actually the biggest challenge we face is literacy. It worries me that if you ask the average American Jew, what does Judaism say about how to be a good person? They'll say, tzedakah, tikkun olam, social justice. Of course, that's also what Christianity and Islam and Buddhism say, right? We have a unique body of law around social justice, but a lot of Jews don't know it. If you say, well, what does Judaism say about God? Man in the sky, I don't believe in. No, we actually have a lot of sophisticated, brilliant theology and spirituality, but Jews don't know it. These are 2 of the most important questions people can ask about their lives. And if the average Jew can't even begin to answer them, I think we have a problem on our hands. And just stepping back, we've focused a lot in America on almost an idea of like Jewish ethnicity, which is not a thing. Jews are every race, every ethnicity, but we've almost looked at Judaism as an ethnic identity. And if that's true, that's a real problem, because ethnic identities in America fade over time. How many people do you know who identify passionately as Irish American, Italian American, German American? I don't know anyone. 150 years ago, we would have known a lot of people, but those ethnic identities fade over time. So when I hear Jews today saying, well, I'm an ethnic Jew, I'm a cultural Jew, my grandma was Jewish, it worries me, because that's not a sustainable identity in an assimilationist country like America. We need to actually carry with us the literacy of the incredible wisdom that Judaism offers. So I really think that's where the main challenge lie, not so much in the marketing, but in the knowledge and preservation of our traditions.
So much of what it means to be Jewish, or so much of the Jewish messaging today, comes through the advocacy organizations and the organizations which fight anti-Semitism.
Yes.
The synagogues, generally speaking, tend to be institutions with pretty strong walls and don't reach out much to the larger communities in which they find themselves. So how then can that kind of message, can that kind of message be brought beyond people like yourself or the people who sit within the walls out to the larger population?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that the work that you're doing on social justice, right, on actually kind of reaching out, bringing people into the community, I think that's very important. I think it's also something that I'm seeing around with a lot of young people in Washington, D.C., is that they are actually hungry for this meaning. They're hungry for this knowledge. You know, they are coming into these communities here in D.C. and they're saying, I want to learn, right? So I think that, you know, having classes and, you know, I think which you have, to really educate people, to show them Judaism's wisdom, I think that can be incredibly powerful as well.
Do you affiliate with a particular community in DC?
You know, it's funny, I don't. I'm connected with a couple of them. I'm not formally a member, but I'm connected with a couple of them quite deeply. But, you know, this is another, I think, challenge that Judaism faces is I'm a 43-year-old woman who is not married and I don't have kids. And a lot of synagogues are very much organized around families with children, which is not ideal because just like the general American population, 50% of Jews are not married. And the majority of Jews between, I think it's ages like 22 and 54, don't have kids. So that leaves a lot of Jews thinking, well, I'm not sure if I belong, right? Synagogues are often shaped around life cycle rituals like bar and bat mitzvah, circumcision, wedding. And if you're not someone kind of with a need to celebrate those rituals, you kind of wonder, well, do I really fit in? But that said, I think I am affiliated with Jewish communities that give me tremendous community and connection. One is the Jewish meditation community, which I'm very much a part of. And I also have a regular Shabbat group where we have Shabbat dinners together. Now on Zoom or outside, but you know, God willing, one day again in person. And that is an incredibly important part of my community.
I need not tell you, and we're all so aware of it every time we come together as a community on Zoom, that we're living in a transformational time. We're living in a really challenging time. The world is challenged in terms of COVID-19, but also we've seen great, you know, political divisions. This nation is highly divided. And I'm talking about a couple different issues, but both of which are issues that are very challenging for everybody in every community. So from your perspective, though, then, both from the work that you've done as a political speechwriter and what you know about politics, and also from this Jewish journey that you're on, what do you see Judaism as being able to contribute to the healing of this world?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we contribute basically a core idea and a core mission. You know, I think that the core beating heart idea of Judaism is that we are all created in the image of God. And whether you are comfortable with the idea of a God or not, it's really not relevant to understanding what that means. You know, what that idea means, as Jewish tradition defines it, and as a rabbi named Yitzhak Greenberg beautifully articulates it, it means that we are all infinitely worthy. There is, you cannot put a value on a human life. It means we're all equal. None of us is more or less valuable than anyone else. And it means we're each fundamentally unique. There is no one else like us. And the reality is that no one on the Zoom actually fully believes that, right? If we fully believe that, think about when you've walked by someone on the street who said, hey, can you help me? Can you spare $1? Maybe you've said, oh, I'm sorry, not today. Maybe you've given the person $1 and walked on. But I guarantee if that person had been a celebrity who you've seen on TV and you admire, you would have stopped and said, oh, wow, of course, can I get your autograph? You would have wanted to be around them. We fundamentally don't think someone struggling on the street and a celebrity are infinitely worthy, are of equal value, are each really special and unique. We value people differently based on their status, their wealth, their beauty, their fame. And when Judaism says, no, 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 we are all created in the image of God, that's a radical idea. That's a real challenge to a kind of market-based consumerist attitude that values people based on their value on the market system. So I think that's the core idea we offer. And I think the core mission that Judaism offers to the world is our mission that basically, you know, if you look at the Torah, what is that story about? The Torah is about a God who rescues this helpless people from slavery, you know, frees them from Egypt, assembles them at the base of a mountain, Mount Sinai, and says to them, your mission in the world is to create a society that is the exact opposite of Egypt. A society that instead of worshiping and valuing only pharaohs and kings and emperors, actually cares deeply about the vulnerable, the widow, the orphan, the poor, the stranger, right? This is an incredible challenge to all of the values of the ancient Near East, where people thought that the Pharaoh was close to God and the emperor was sort of God. And this Jewish God is saying, no, 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 no. Actually, like, I care about the vulnerable and you need to as well. So I think that mission to create a society that's the exact opposite of Egypt, where people, instead of being used as objects, are fully celebrated in their divine humanity, I think that mission in the world is just so critical right now. And I think it's a Jewish mission, but I also think it's a mission that we should be sharing with the rest of humanity as well.
I was going to ask you a question next, which I feel that you answered, and that is, I was going to ask you, what are your guiding texts? You know, what are the most important texts in the Jewish tradition? And my sense from what you just said is, one is that we're all created in the image of God, and the other has to do with remembering that you were slaves in Egypt and all of the implications of that often repeated verse. Are there others that come to mind?
I mean, you nailed it. It's those two.
Yeah. Many Jews who are not affiliated consider themselves spiritual, but not religious. They identify as being Jewish, but they don't engage in the rituals of the Jewish community. So drawing on other traditions and practices, people are finding spiritual connections, and obviously you also are doing that. So what do you think about that approach? And is there a way to mainline that? Is there a way to bring that into the traditional Jewish like synagogues and places where Jews gather? Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I think when people say I'm spiritual but not religious, what they're saying is that I don't think God is a man in the sky who controls everything and rewards and punishes people as he sees fit. And I imagine that both of us agree with that, right? It's like the God that they don't believe in, we don't believe in either, because that's an idol, right? That's not God. That's a simplistic definition, which is not Jewish. You know, I think oftentimes we sort of think we've let God be captured by a group of people who's very loud in the American conversation, who's decided that God is this judgmental man who hates this group and hates that group and has anointed this politician. And it's like, okay, that's not God, right? That is an idol that human beings have created, and that's fine. But, you know, the Jewish God, we as Jews have the humility of saying, we can't define God. We're talking about something far beyond what our tiny little human brains can possibly define, right? We have the humility to say, we're not going to create some definition of God. That's idolatry. That's shrinking God to the limits that our human minds can understand. Instead, what we have is centuries and centuries of different conceptions of God. You know, as you know, having studied all of them, you have Jewish mystics who say that God is everything. You all are God. I'm God. The idea that there's a barrier or separation between us, that's an illusion, right? That man on the street who asked me for help, that man is God, manifestation of the divine. You have the Jewish thinker Martin Buber, who says that God is what arises between two people in deep human connection, being fully vulnerable to each other, fully seeing each other's humanity. In moments of relation between them, what arises is God. You have a rabbi named Mordecai Kaplan who says that God is the process by which we each become our highest and truest selves. So I think that oftentimes when people say I'm spiritual but not religious, they have no idea about the complexity and sophistication and maturity of Jewish theology and spirituality. So that's why when I hear that, I kind of cringe a little bit, because I actually just think it's based in a lack of knowledge. And I also think there's a danger in that kind of pick and choose spirituality, where it's like, oh, I'm going to do this Buddhist thing because it's so me. And I'm going to do this Christian thing because it's just so me. And I'll do this Jewish thing because it really is so me. And what you're doing is you're consuming media, you're consuming religion the way you consume social media, which is just kind of following the websites, the posts, the social media streams that affirm your own beliefs. And that's not a great idea, right? I think one of the things that has been most valuable about Judaism for me is that it's pushed me. It's challenged me. You know, it said to me, you know, Sarah, you think you're a good person, but do you gossip? Wait, what's gossip? Well, here's what we say gossip is. I do, right? I gossip a lot. I may be really hurting people with that. I better think about that. Or, hey, Sarah, you give money to charity, but are you thoughtful about how you give it, about where you're giving it, about whether you're empowering people or disempowering people, about whether you're humiliating people or not, right? Judaism is pushing me. And when you refuse to be pushed like that, when you only do the sort of comfort the afflicted stuff and you don't do the comfortable stuff, I think you miss out and you don't really grow and develop as a person.
We spoke about this idea that you had thought you were a pretty good person. And then you realized at some point that when you study Jewish ethics, you realized you may be a good person, but you're not a great person.
Yes.
So tell us about that kind of process.
Yeah. I mean, I always thought I was nice, right? I help people who are in need. I feel like I'm a good friend. I mean, what is there more than that? And I think many of us kind of feel that way, right? Very few people think of themselves as a bad person. And the truth is that the defining ethic of modern American life is do whatever you want as long as you don't hurt other people too much, right? It's like, freedom. That's sort of our defining ethic. Do what you want. Judaism says, no, actually, the defining ethic is not freedom. It is actually obligation to others. And it's not just the kind of help the poor, be kind. Okay, well, then I'm going to give 0.01% of my income. I'm helping the poor. Judaism says, no. You got to give more. And here's how you need to do it. And so if you actually study Jewish law, you can look at it and say, well, this is very nitpicky. This is very in the weeds, but it's important, right? That in the weeds thing is important. When Jewish law says to us, if you've given someone a loan who's in financial need and you know they can't pay it back, you should really try not to run into them on the street because you're going to embarrass them. When it tells us that people who receive tzedakah, who receive financial assistance, they should also give a little bit of financial assistance, it's saying actually no one should feel like just a taker. They should feel like a giver too. So many laws like that are demanding that we have an exquisite sensitivity to the dignity, to the feelings of other human beings, right? And so when I hear people say, well, Christianity is a religion of love and Judaism is a religion of law, I'm stunned at the ignorance of that, because our laws are actually how we express our love. They're actually mandating a very deep and real and on the ground, daily, hourly kind of love for other people, where we actually do the work of considering their dignity, of considering their needs. It's not a fluffy, love thy neighbor, yay. It's actually a high bar that's not easy. If you look at all the Jewish laws around chesed, loving kindness, it doesn't just say, oh, if your friend is sick, send a text. If someone's lost a loved one, send flowers. It says you get yourself to that person. You get on that plane, you get in your car, you go to that person and you are with them. You don't have to say anything in particular, but you have to be there with them, showing your loving presence. And obviously we cannot do that during COVID, please don't. But we can be with them on Zoom. We can be with them on the phone. We can be with them outside their windows. And that's a much higher bar than I would have thought to articulate for myself. So I think Judaism has, it's humbled me, and it's also giving me a higher standard to which to aspire.
Yeah, that's one of the areas where I think COVID has revealed to us how we can do things in ways that we never imagined previously that are really significant. And we've worked really hard, as many synagogues and Jewish communities have, to be able to reach out to other people, to make phone calls, to bring chalot on Shabbat, to really, to take these obligations seriously, and they can continue to be done even virtually. And that's been really very, very beautiful and fulfilling part of this period.
Yes.
So this past week, we had a scholar in residence here on Zoom from Yerushalayim. And I spoke to you a little bit about him, and you're familiar with the work of Daniel Hartman.
Oh, yes.
From the Hartman Institute.
Yes.
And we got involved in a particular conversation, and I say it's particular because it's very specific to the last couple weeks. And I'm going to throw the question out at you also.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks ago on Saturday Night Live, Michael Che did an offhanded joke where he spoke about 50%, where his response to 50% of the people in Israel were vaccinated against COVID. And Michael Che said, yeah, that's the Jewish people. And then he went on. When I heard it, I will tell you that I chuckled. And I also thought to myself, oh boy, is he in for it this week? And sure enough, the internet just blew up of critique of him and Saturday Night Live and and NBC. What's your sense about what happened there?
I mean, it wasn't great. I do think people need to be educated before they speak. I think what frustrates me about the dialogue around Israel is that it's people who actually don't know the history, they don't know the nuances, they don't know the subtleties, and that's reflected in the dialogue, right? It's like angry, charged talking points that are not actually based in facts. And I like facts, I like truth. And, it is very frustrating to me that people don't do the work of actually learning what's true. And, I don't have a chapter in my book about Israel. And I thought a lot about that. That was a hard decision for me, but I realized if I'm going to do this well, I would have to really go into detail, into nuance, into history. And I just realized that I wanted my focus to be more on Jewish religion. So Israel is basically mentioned in almost every chapter, and there's, some sections about it. But my frustration is that there just is, people have not done the work. They're not educated, they're ignorant. And so that to me is very frustrating.
Daniel spoke about a kernel of truth when talking about that. He talked about two things. He talked about, one is a sense of humor that comes only with confidence. And with insecurity, we are very reactionary.
Yes.
And the second is there was a real problem with Arab citizens of Israel and Palestinians who live in the territories. And so that's part of our reaction to it, and some of where our reaction came to, not just about Michael Che and
Right.
and his making a joke out of all of that. Yeah.
And you're right. There are actually he was getting at something that many of us are troubled by, right? There's a real issue there. But when it's just told in this kind of joke on Saturday Night Live, the people watching that, most of them don't actually have the background and context to understand that joke. If that joke was told only to us on this Zoom call, I think we could actually receive it in the spirit in which it's meant, and we have the context to understand it. A lot of Americans don't. And I think that's maybe where the reactivity came in.
Yeah. So we're going to go about 5 more minutes. Tell us your craziest White House story.
Oh man, there are many.
Give us an insider's look. Yeah.
So I think one of my craziest ones was when I was writing for President Obama in 2009, I wrote his first college commencement speech, which was at Arizona State University. And this was a time, you'll remember, when the economy was in free fall. There were actually headlines about whether we were heading to the next Great Depression. So he was very busy. And, we met with him a few weeks in advance to discuss these speeches. And I could just tell he was distracted. He sort of gave me an idea for the speech, but I could tell his mind was really elsewhere. But I thought, okay, that's what he wants. So I wrote him the speech that he had asked for, handed it in a week in advance. I didn't hear anything. So I thought, okay, it's fine. The morning of the speech, I was awakened by a call from the Oval Office saying the president would like to meet with you. And I just thought, this is not good, right? I'm not being called in to be told, like, nice job, Tiger. That's not what was happening. So I threw on clothes. I rush in. I am so frazzled and frantic. I get to the Oval Office, and there's actually a picture of me that the White House photographer took that day where I just look totally disheveled, and the president is there looking very crisp and commanding, kind of holding the speech. And he says to me, well, look, this just isn't the speech I want to give. Really sorry. I didn't get to look at it till last night. I apologize, but I want to give a different speech. And he just proceeds to dictate to me the contours of an entirely different speech. And I thought, well, this is not great because this speech is today. So I rush back to my office. I'm frantically trying to rewrite it. I'm getting help from my colleagues. I'm just typing as fast as I can. A few hours later, I get him a draft. Still not really excited about it. He gives me more feedback. I'm typing. I'm realizing I'm about to miss the motorcade, which are the cars that take staff from the White House to Andrews Air Force Base to meet Air Force One. So I call our schedulers and I say, I just need more time. And they say, no worries, we'll get you on the helicopter with the president because he leaves right before the plane takes off. I thought, great. So I had another hour writing. It's time to get to the helicopter to Marine One. And, I'm running across the White House lawn, like papers, dripping out of my arms. I have my laptop. I'm really quite anxious. Get on the helicopter. I'm kind of discreetly trying to edit the speech, but it's so tiny inside Marine One that my knees are almost touching the president. And so we're flying over the Washington Mall, and he looks over at me and he says, hey, what are you doing? Enjoy the view. When else do you get to see this? I just thought, like, how kind is that? Right? He knew I was, not a senior staffer. He knew that I'd probably never get to fly in the helicopter again, which was true. And he wanted me to enjoy it. I just thought, like, wow, I could not believe, A, he was that calm, and B, he was that kind. So we get on the plane. We're still rewriting. The computers on Air Force One in 2009 were very slow. they had almost a keystroke delay. So you'd type the key and there'd be like a split-second pause before it actually came up on the screen, which was maddening. I'm trying to print, that's going slowly. We're taxiing, and the trip director is standing behind my shoulder saying, "You've got to get off the plane, get off, people are leaving, we got to go, we got to go." And I'm panicking. I finally get it printed out. I run to the motorcade. We're traveling to the school and we're still editing the speech. And I'm just thinking, okay, I always tell younger speechwriters I supervise that you get to a point with some speeches where it doesn't have to be good, but it does have to be done. So I thought, okay, it's just going to be done. This is a disaster. Okay, can't win them all. And so we get to the event, and President Obama walks up to that podium and delivers the speech like he has been delivering it every day for his entire life. It was like this flawless delivery where he was engaged and emotional and just nailed every line. And I'm just watching with such awe because we wrote that speech in many moving vehicles over the course of a day. And we get back on the plane. He just has not broken a sweat. He is unflappable. And so that was a very stressful day. They often say in the White House, you never have the day you think you're going to have. And that's a pretty good illustration of that principle.
Well, his abilities as a speaker were truly noted by all of us, and certainly any of us who speak publicly saw him as a model. You know, it always felt like every word that he spoke was his word. There was a sense of comfort with himself when he spoke, and a deep sense of sincerity with it all also.
Yes.
So let me conclude with one last question.
Yeah.
What's the most Jewish speech you've ever given?
Oh, I love this question. I've certainly written I wrote a Holocaust memorial speech in 2009. I've written Hanukkah statements and things like that. But I actually think the most deeply Jewish speech I've written was in 2016. It was Mrs. Obama's final college commencement speech. So another commencement speech story. And when I heard where she was going to be giving this speech, I was very moved because it turned out she was going to be speaking at the City College of New York. And my family has a bit of a history with this school, which is that when my great-grandparents first came to this country, they settled in New York City. And my great-grandmother was so excited because she heard that there was this city college system that accepted Jews, it accepted people with no money, and it accepted girls. And she had 4 daughters. And so she thought, I can't believe I'm in a country where my daughters could get an education. Unfortunately, they left New York, moved to Massachusetts, which didn't have that kind of robust system. And my grandmother, who was one of those 4 daughters, never got a chance to go to college. And this was a source of such heartbreak for her throughout her entire 99 years. You know, she always wanted to go to college, go to law school, become a lawyer, and go into politics. Like that was her dream. And so, you know, for me, 2 generations later, I couldn't believe it that I was pulling up to the City College of New York, the very place where my grandmother yearned to attend all those years ago. And I have a college degree, I have a law degree, I am a lawyer, and I am working in politics, you know, fulfilling all the dreams that she never got to fulfill. And to see Mrs. Obama walk up to that podium and look out at this audience of today's striving, dreaming immigrants, right? Those chairs where so many Jews have sat over the years, you know, there were lots of Jews sitting in them now, and also students who at this school speak 100 languages and are of 150 nationalities. And to hear Mrs. Obama, the first Black First Lady of the United States, speaking to these students and saying, you know what, like immigrants have always made this country strong. Our diversity is our greatest strength. You know, it felt like a very full circle kind of moment, and it made me very proud to be Jewish and just very proud to be working for this amazing woman. So that to me felt like a very Jewish speech.
Thanks. You know, speaking on behalf of a Jewish community, I would say that you give us a lot of reasons to feel proud. You are extremely insightful. You are very, very articulate. I'm sure the best work is yet to be seen, that your future will be great. And if you ever decide that you want to be a speechwriter for a rabbi, I could use one. But we hope
I don't think you need one. No.
We hope to see you again. And I see that some of our people would like to purchase your book, so that what we'll have to do is make arrangements to have you sign some books and send them to.
Love to. I would be thrilled to do that.
So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Sharing your
Such an
stories
honor.
with us, and we look forward to more. And you're invited to stay for a wonderful Musaf service. So please
We'll do that.
stay with us. And
Thank you.
everybody in the congregation. We thank you for your attention to this. This was a pleasure, Sarah.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor, and I have loved being in conversation with you, and I hope to continue it.
Me too. The Musaf service, page 155, Cantor Fishman.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעלמא דברה